Well, hello again, and welcome back to the metagame. I am Chaz Marler, your host, and I'm getting my stuff situated in the right spot, so hopefully you can hear me, but not hear me too loudly so that it burns out our speakers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make sure that everyone's on board and the audio and video is coming through correctly before I dig in. So I'm going to turn my attention to our friendly neighborhood chat area, which is a big part of the metagame. And we're just going to wait for a thumbs up from our neighborhood chat to make sure everything's coming through loud and clear. And and it does look like everything's coming through loud and clear. Thank you very much, Kabuki, for not only acknowledging the audio and video quality, but also the extensive stubble today. I'm actually, this ties into part of our discussion today, oddly enough. So I'm going to come back to this a little bit later. And in the meantime, you can just kind of enjoy the change of facial pace that we have here. All right, so what are we doing here anyway? This is the metagame. This is the series where we not only talk about board games, but sometimes also talk about talking about board games. And today's episode is going to be one of those that is the latter. This topic for today actually came up as a question from last week's episode, where someone asked, what keeps you moving and motivating and going as a content creator? And so I since there was interest in it, and it's actually a topic that I really enjoy talking about, probably more than I should, thought I'd make it the topic of today's episode. So the way that this works, if this is your first time joining us, I'm going to present a topic, a presentation on the topic, and I'll discuss it for a few minutes. And then afterwards, I'm going to turn to the real-time YouTube chat that's going on during this live stream. And I'm going to address any questions and comments and anything that comes up in the chat. People asking either about this topic or really anything else that you guys want to discuss. I'm going to turn my attention to the YouTube chat, and I'm going to look specifically for comments posted with the hashtag TMG for the metagame. And anyone, so I'm going to use my web browser search tool to make those comments rise to the top for me. And as always, there's not usually enough time for me to respond to every comment and question that's posted in the chat, but I do try to go through the chat log after the show's over, just to kind of go through and make sure there's nothing I missed, and maybe I can bring it up in a future episode. So, but this time, what we're going to be talking about, and I'm going to try to keep this centralized to board game media and keep it focused on board games as much as possible, because that's what we're all here on the Dice Tower for. So, but the question that came up is, what do you do to keep yourself motivated to continue creating YouTube videos? Continue through the difficulties that a content creator can encounter. What challenges does a content creator face, and how do you persevere through them? Well, I thought that was an excellent question because, first of all, if you go to, there's a website called boardgamelinks.com. And if you go to boardgamelinks.com, they have a listing of a very good list of the YouTubers and bloggers and vloggers and reviewers and such for board games that have websites and channels and stuff created. And if you go there as of the time of this recording, there are 438 board game related websites, most of which are news, blogs, and vlogs. And that's, they have just they don't have everybody, but they have this list. Now, if you think about it, that is nearly enough board game media makers listed on this one site to allow almost every new game that's released at Essen to have a dedicated content creator discuss it. So we talk about there's like this flood of board games that seems to be coming out, but there's also this flood of board game content creators that seems to be coming out as well. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, that's up to you to decide. And hopefully that'll be one of the things that we discuss. Okay, But okay, we've talked before and other people have talked about getting started, but that's not really what this discussion is about. This isn't going to be about getting started. This is going to be after you have figured out what you are passionate about and that you have something to say about it, and you get started and you create a couple of videos and you're going along. What next? There's a really good YouTube channel called, I think, just YouTube content creators. Scott Moyer, I believe his name is. He does a really great. He has a really great YouTube channel, and after this goes live on the Dice Towers YouTube channel, I'll add a link to his YouTube channel in the description of this video. But he talks about often. He does inspirational and instructional videos for YouTubers, and one thing that he talks about all the time is someone will launch a YouTube channel, and they'll be going, and they have kind of the honeymoon phase where it goes along, and then there's a stagnation or a dip, and things don't grow as fast as you want, and this is when a lot of the people leave and stop doing it. And what do you do to persevere through this dip, through the growth curve that comes after it? And there's no guarantee that there even is a growth curve that comes after it. So, well, there's an example of the very first thing. I've already talked about finding a topic, and I think we're all here because the topic we enjoy is board games. And talking about board games, obviously, that's kind of what this show is about. But also finding this niche about it that you're passionate about. So that's the first thing. Me personally, item number one, how I persevere. And again, before I go any further, I want to offer a disclosure. First of all, this topic has a potential to become navel-gazing and preachy, and that's not my intention with this episode. I'm just going to talk about what I've experienced myself and what personally works for me. And so I just wanted to put that out there. But that's the first thing, is finding something that you're passionate about. And I think I've mentioned before that when I did get started, I didn't like wake up one day and say, I want to do board game reviews and board game media. I knew that I needed a creative outlet. And so I sat for 6 months or so or longer. I sat on it knowing I wanted to do something in content creation, but I thought, well, I had several different avenues I could go down, and board games was one of my passions, and so I sat for a while and tried to figure out, do I actually have something to say about this? And after a while, I was like, okay, yeah, and then I started. So making sure beforehand that you have something internal in you that you want to say. Having something to say will keep you going. Because if you don't have that fundamental anchor, you're going to burn yourself out real quick, because you're going to come out and say the same things that other people are saying and then get frustrated when that doesn't stand out in the crowd, which we'll get to in a minute. Anyway, so finding your passion will keep you going. Having something to say about the topic will keep you going. The other thing about that is I mentioned Scott or Rich Moyer, Schmoyer. His last name is Schmoyer. Again, look for the description, the link in the description below. But doing your research on this, study. If it's something you enjoy, one of the things that keeps me going is studying. The Video Creators YouTube channel, and also there's other YouTube channels, not only about board games and such, but also about video creation and learning new techniques and learning things about the technical aspects of the hobby of video creation. And always kind of being in a constant study about that will keep you going. Even, excuse me, I'm getting over some con crud from Origins, so my throat is really raw right now. So excuse me, I might be drinking a little more water than usual. But even if those areas of study and influence don't come directly from board games, it's still important to immerse yourself in it. There's 3 publications that I recommend to anyone who wants to do this type of creative endeavor. The first one I don't have a copy of with me. Let me move this out of the way so I can make sure I'm on camera and have it hold up the right spot. The first one is a book by a couple of brothers with the last name Heath. And it's a book called Made to Stick, which is, it's actually a book about marketing, but it is any board game creator, a designer, publisher, and YouTuber as well, anyone who does a creative endeavor in any way, I believe should have this as standard reading. The book, again, is called Made to Stick. And what it is, it's like a 5-point outline of what makes certain ideas sticky, what makes things stick in our brains. And it talks a lot about marketing and advertising campaigns. But it talks about having stories and things that are concrete and easy for your mind to wrap around. So if you're developing a board game and you're looking for a theme, or you're creating a YouTube channel or a blog and you want to communicate your ideas in such a way that it stands out to people and sticks in their brain, I recommend, first of all, reading the book Made to Stick by the brothers with the last name Heath. The second thing I recommend anyone to kind of keep them motivated and going is a book by Scott McCloud called Understanding Comics. And this book, I actually think is very important for any creative person to read. Again, even if you're a publisher or a board game designer or such, and not even just a YouTuber. But the reason why is that this book talks about the history of comics and communicating ideas and sequential art format and stuff. But there's part in here, there's a chapter or 2 or 3 dedicated to content creation. And there's a page in here that stands out in my memory, always will. It talks about like 6 different types of creators, or the six stages of the content creation process. And it talks about the honeymoon stage, when someone's really excited. You grab your camera, you grab your board games, you start talking about them. And then the next stage where you want to refine your craft and get better. And it continues through these six stages of development. And there's a scene in here of someone that's kind of just sitting there in a chair, kind of the older, wiser content creator, I guess. But they're sitting there in a chair with a little thought bubble, and they're thinking, why am I doing this? And that section of this book, why am I continuing? Why am I doing this? And talking about that as it fits into these different stages of content creation, I think is a vital instrument, lesson to have for anyone. Again, not just YouTubers and bloggers, but if you want to start a Kickstarter and start a board game company, or get your work and become part of the industry of board games, even though this is about comics, the ideas presented in Scott McCloud's book are, I think, essential nuggets of wisdom for any creative type, even in the board game industry. So Understanding Comics is the second piece of the puzzle there that I recommend for anyone who wants to do that type of creative endeavor. And then the third publication is a big pile of Tick comic books. And there's no real secret or insight into this one. It's just everyone should read the Tick. So I grabbed this off my shelf as well. Okay. So immersing yourself in that type of education on the topic that you enjoy, I think, is vital to keep yourself going. And as I was writing up my notes for this episode, I kept running into a recurring theme, and that is that doing things that prevent you from feeling like you stagnate creatively. And having your unique voice will give you topics and ideas and an approach to the content that is your own and unique. Studying like the video creator courses and YouTube channels and stuff like that, continuing to study and refine your craft, like what's mentioned in Understanding Comics, that will keep you from stagnating. And another way that will keep you from stagnating is just always trying something new, which brings me to something that I think has been vital to me continuing to do this, and that is the segments on Board Game Breakfast from the Dice Tower that I've been fortunate enough to be able to be doing. And I really think that so for those that don't know how this started, Tom Vassell from the Dice Tower used to have a weekly news show that he'd do. And he was just, Dice Tower Weekly News. And a couple years ago, he changed the format to be this variety show called Board Game Breakfast. And when he started up a couple episodes into it, he just openly in one episode had an open call for contributors. Hey, do you make board game content? You want to be on Board Game Breakfast? Contact me. And at that time, I had been doing my own YouTube channel for about 6 to 8 months, maybe a little bit longer than that. But so I contacted Tom, and in Tom's natural way, he said, sure, let's try it. So that was how I got started with the Board Game Breakfast episodes. Now, Board Game Breakfast introduced two very important things to me as a content creator. First, Tom was very strict in that the segments were 2 minutes long. They could be shorter, but if they're 2 minutes and 1 second, he said, I will cut them and chop them right off there at the 2 minute mark. And I've heard him say that to other people's, and I've seen him do that. And as time goes by, you can establish yourself and things grow. But so one thing that taught me was how to edit myself. And that is a very technical exercise. But the reason that that's important to continue working is because it teaches you it teaches you what's important to say and do. And it keeps you from wasting your time going down a rabbit trail that you don't need to when you realize that it's superfluous. Now, jokes and red herrings and twists and stuff, of course they have their place in their content, as long as that's part of the reason the content is there. There's always times where there will be things just to trim out. And so learning how to edit yourself and take out what's not necessary to your presentation to make it as tight a presentation as possible is important to keep going, because it streamlines your development process and then in turn over time your thought process, so that you are able to continue making content that is more watchable, and also you don't spend as much time on the things that you don't need to be spending your time. And if you want to be creating content on a regular basis, that is vital to streamline that process so you can keep producing it. Speaking of producing it on a regular basis, that's the second thing that Board Game Breakfast introduced to me that I think was super important, is that Board Game Breakfast is a weekly show. I think 50 out of the 52 weeks of the year, a Board Game Breakfast episode is produced. And I've made it a personal challenge to always be there. Once I was fortunate enough to be there, I thought as long as I'm having fun and getting positive reception, I want to stay there and be present. So I've made it a personal challenge to myself to stick to a weekly schedule and always have some content produced. So that's the second thing with the Board Game Breakfast. Having a regular schedule, I think, is also vital to continuing your motivation. And it's not easy to do. I think Hemingway once had this quote, which I keep in mind. I've almost printed it out and like hung it next to my work desk and stuff. But I believe Hemingway once said, in terms of the creative process, you've always got to leave a little bit of water in the well, which means if you burn yourself out, you're done and it's going to be hard to recover. But so when you're tapping that creative well for a weekly Board Game Breakfast segment or just a video or whatever, you need to learn to pace yourself creatively too. So you have to find this balance. Whether it's a weekly schedule, a monthly schedule, 3 times a week schedule, doesn't matter what the schedule is, but find a schedule and then learn how to set up your own personal and work life in such a way that you can accommodate that schedule so that you can pace yourself to continue producing work on that regular schedule. Because not only will it keep your viewers returning because they will know when to expect new content, but it keeps you, producing it. And it becomes this positive feedback loop that when your viewers know when to expect new content, they see it, they're happy, they give you positive reception, which fuels you to and puts more water in the well and keeps things moving along. So that was the second thing. Developing a regular schedule, I think, is vital for content creators. Even if that's not weekly, it can be any schedule we want. But find something to stick to it. And I myself, I know that I'm not that good. And I don't know if you can hear the dogs, but I think that my delivery of stuff from Origins is arriving right now, and I think the delivery truck is pulling up. I can hear it. I think the dogs can hear it. So apologize for any background noise you hear, but I got a package waiting for me on the front porch as soon as I'm done here. So okay, but let's continue on to what's important. So now that's talking about that schedule and things. Now, again, I don't want to sound preachy. That's not the point here. And I'm not even good at adhering to my own rules. But these are just the things that I've learned over time that I try to apply to myself to keep myself going. And so talking about like Board Game Breakfast and a weekly schedule and keeping things moving, the next thing is to know what's important now. I think I've talked about, I believe his name is Dave Sim, the creator of the comic book Cerebus. He wrote a series of really helpful articles and editorials in his comics back in the mid-90s. And he had one about being a content creator. And he had a very hardcore approach to content creation. And his point was that if you want to be successful and keep going, whether you, again, are developing a board game and trying to get it made and play tested and out there, or creating content and trying to get that content out there, he talked about how there is always going to be a distraction. There's always going to be something that wants your attention. And this can be good or bad. I mean, because you can say, hey, someone might want to say, hey, let's go play Overwatch tonight. And if I play Overwatch tonight online with you guys, I'm going to have a lot of fun playing with my friends, but that's going to be several hours that I could be spending putting together this next video. And he said there's always going to be a distraction. If it's something important like family or friends and stuff, that is important, and you can't just turn that stuff off. But every distraction that comes up, his advice was look at the distraction and look at the work and make a choice. And it was that simple. Look at the distraction, look at the work, make a choice. And doing the work, the content creation, the play testing, the design work, the rules rewriting, the revisioning, and everything, that work is not always going to be what is the important, correct choice to make. But learn to see that and make the choice. Because the thing that motivates me oftentimes is basically the voice in bed principle. At the end of the day, when I'm laying in bed trying to fall asleep and it's dark and it's quiet and it's just myself and my thoughts, I think back over the day and I think, okay, I had all these choices of what to do today. And so if I accomplish my goals for that day, I find it a lot easier to sleep at night, and that voice, and I'm happy with what I accomplished that day. But if I go off and I let the distractions that aren't important, if I made those choices, I find it a lot harder to sleep at night because I didn't finish that video, and that's why. And that comes back to the facial hair here that Kabuki Kid mentioned. Since returning from Origins, I knew that there's a cluster of videos that I wanted to finish personally and for the Dice Tower, and also real world work and everything, the workday. So honestly, since I've returned from Origins, trying to get through these videos and this other work, preparing for Dice Tower Con, I'm going to be leaving again in like 10 days. So in order to get all this done, I haven't even taken the time to shave yet, because every minute that has been available so far has been spent on video creation. It's been actually, it's been kind of a lucky week. My daughter is visiting grandma this week. My wife and I both actually got really sick after I got back from Origins. So we've both been sitting at our computers. I don't want to move nearly all week. So that's also been conducive to getting work done. But anyway, yeah, every little thing like that, making those decisions. But anyway, and the biggest decision, the biggest choice like that to a creative person is something that I read once, just tagged in graffiti around town. Some of the best graffiti I ever read, which simply stated, "Kill your television." And again, I watch YouTube channels and I relax. We don't have cable out here where we're living anymore, but we do have internet, so we watch YouTube and Hulu and Netflix and stuff. So I'm not saying that I don't watch any media. No, I still watch stuff, but like I said, when I go to the dentist's office, the dentist has TVs like hanging from the ceiling for the patients to watch as they sit back in the chair, which is kind of cool. You have these TVs, and they'll just turn on, like the Discovery Channel or something. But when I'm sitting there getting my teeth drilled on at the dentist's office, and I'm watching just normal basic cable television, I cannot believe the amount of commercials. You can't go 5 minutes now without there being another block of 5 minutes worth of commercials. And it's disconnecting from that, killing your television and getting away from that, and desensitized to that constant barrage of the advertising that wastes your time, is just an excellent thing to become aware of. So anyway, kill your television doesn't mean don't watch TV and don't consume other media. It simply means, it has helped me at least to learn how to unplug and break that habit of knowing, at 7 o'clock, I'm going to sit down in front of the television and sit here until 10 o'clock every night, and, with a snack. Breaking out of that habit gives you so much more time to focus on what's important now and make those choices between the distractions and the work. Anyway, we're reaching a real soapboxy, preachy side of things, so I'm going to wrap up my portion of this with one more thing here, and that is to keep yourself motivated. Again, doesn't matter if you're creating board games or Kickstarter or doing content creation, but to keep yourself motivated and keep yourself going, don't develop within a vacuum. First of all, find an editor. My wife is a fantastic editor. She has prevented me from screwing up so many times. There's been quite a few videos that I have written out a script for, run them by her, and she said, no, throw this out. You know, it's the wrong approach, the wrong way. You'll regret doing this. And I'll set it aside. I'll be disgruntled. I'll either retype it or I'll let it sit for a few days. But every single time I'll come back to it and I'll look at it and I'll say, yeah, I'm really glad I did not commit to putting this on the internet for forever. So find an editor, someone to bounce your ideas off of, or someone that will truthfully tell you when an idea stinks and you need to go in a different direction. Also, though, find a support group in a way. Some of the, I think I've mentioned before, I started doing content creation because I would come home from work and I would just do more work, and I wasn't seeing my friends anymore because we kind of moved a little farther away from them, and so it was just me and my work every day. So the other podcasters and media makers that I have met and come to kind of consider my peers, or at least the people that set the bar that I strive to be at, they've become some of my best friends currently. And so having these other people, other content creators you like, other YouTubers, if you want to be involved in this industry, reach out to people, because that one thing that I found is that I would say the vast majority of people that are creating board games, publishing board games, designing board games, or talking about board games have the attitude of the saying that a rising tide raises all boats. Basically, the better we do, the better that we all do. And there are some people that want to build themselves up by pushing others down. But fortunately, I've seen those people being the minority. So if you want to be involved in this industry in any aspect of it, reach out to the people that you admire. And, meeting anyone new, there's always, a polite, oh, hello, I don't know you, but hello, that's great. Ask me any questions you have, or, my time is limited, but I will be friendly as possible to you. But if you continue doing the work and the quality of your work is there, you will continue to be a presence. And that's what's really important, being a presence. Not just at conventions and stuff, but online, being a presence as much as possible and creating that support base and getting to know the people in the industry is really vital. Going back to the tick, I actually had there was actually a ulterior motive for bringing up the tick comic book. In the early 90s, I self-published regionally in the Pacific Northwest my own little black and white, silly superhero little comic book. And when I was doing that, I purposefully avoided reading anything about the tick because I didn't want to be influenced by it. I wanted to stand on my own. And I think that was a mistake because you can be influenced by something and admire something without plagiarizing it and still have your own ideas. So that's why now with the content creation stuff and talking about board game media, I'm taking the exact opposite approach. Immerse myself around as many content creators and friends in this industry as you possibly can, because it's not going to lead to feeling like you're plagiarizing ideas, hopefully, but it's going to, again, put water in your well. It's going to create a positive feedback loop, and it's going to give you more ideas and more things to say and just keep you motivated and going. And which brings me to the very last point, is in that, I think, again, speaking just for myself, the very last point on this, talking about this support network and then having an editor, find a Jimmy Plains. Now, when I was in middle school and high school, one of my friends was named Jim Plains or Jimmy Plains. And again, name has been changed to protect the innocent, and Jimmy Plains was like me in a way. He enjoyed geeky stuff, but he was a geek, but he was still cool. He still did sports, and he was invited to all the parties. And he was brilliant mind. And so we would always challenge him. We were always in the same classes together, but he always did a little bit better. He was always a little bit smarter, a little bit faster, a little bit more popular at every single thing. But we were friends, but we were also rivals, whether he realized it or not. So finding your Jimmy Plains, finding your friendly rival, someone that, and it doesn't have to be one person, but it can be different aspects, but finding that person or people that you admire, but continually raise the bar for you, that I think is vital. Almost the most vital thing to keep going. I've had conversations with some of my friends in other content creators, and we've talked about, oh, I really liked how you did this, or I like how you did that. And it boils down to, you guys realize that, and we've said this to each other, you guys realize I'm really super jealous of you, and I envy what you created there, right? It's like, are you kidding? I feel the same way. So it goes both ways. But whether they realize it or not, find that person that pushes you to do better. When one of these people is moderator Chris from Flip the Table. And when we did that thrifting rap battle together, we both worked on our own halves, and we kind of dovetailed together sometimes, but we'd go off. And I worked on my portion. And I don't know if moderator Chris realizes it, but every time he came back with like the music he made or the lyrics he came up with or the parts that he filmed, he'd come back and say, oh, here's my half of this part. I would go, that's great. And I would go and secretly throw away everything I had done on my half and redo it, because he kept raising the bar, and he forced me to really push myself to really do as good as I could on that thing. And I think hopefully the quality of the work demonstrates that. But without that friendly rivalry taking place within it, that content would not have been as strong as it was. So, in short, words, and lots of them. This episode should also be a practical example of why learning to edit yourself is so important. But anyway, there's just some of the tips on what kind of keeps me going. And again, I'm going to turn over to the chat here and try to make my way through the chat area to respond to your comments with the time that we have left. But no, I'm not. I already said I added my last thing, so I'm not going to add one more thing. Let's just go over to the chat. So hold on. Let's go to our chat because that is where it's at. Hi, chat people. All right, so let's start catching up here. I got to do my little search. All right. Hey, actually, we're not going to start with our good friend and frequent guest, Kabuki Kid. Someone beat you to the punch this time, Kabuki. I'm sorry. Nyrus Interactive, who I believe I met you in person at Origins just a couple of days ago. I believe that you came by and said that you, if I did meet you at Nyrus, I do remember our meeting. And if I didn't meet you at Nyrus, if I didn't meet you at Origins, I don't know who I met, but I thought it was you. Anyway, this person mentions that this topic is something that I have been struggling with and defining for myself, so I'm ready to sit back and learn. I hope with all of the information I just vomited out, I hope that there was some nuggets of information in there that were helpful. So again, this is one of those topics that's so broad and there's so much that I could say about it. I could make a whole mini series on this and I don't think anyone wants that, but hopefully there's something condensed in this one that was helpful. Now we get to Kabuki Kid, who mentions Chaz. When directing your bits, like the Origins video, maybe you need to Kubrick the actors and make them take like 78 takes until they act more naturally. Who says I didn't? That's the magic of editing. For example, that first episode, which I believe has gone up, there's the very intro, the very beginning of the intro where Tom and Sam assign the vlog to me. Then I go and I film that penny. What's amazing about editing is that those were all three of those parts, being assigned and then Tom saying, we need to clarify, and filming the penny. Those were all filmed at different times. In fact, the penny was filmed the very last thing when I got back home. And I actually grabbed crowd noise, threw that up behind me, and just filmed me here in my little studio holding the penny and spliced it all together. So through the magic of editing, you can do stuff like that. And again, if you do 77 other takes, there might be those many other takes on the cutting room floor. So let's continue on here. Very beginning of the show, I talked about how there's 438 content creators for board games listed on BoardGameLinks.com, and whether or not that's a good thing. Kabuki Kid here continues the thought with mentioning more content and content creators is a good thing. The cream will rise to the top, so I'm not worried about there being a lot. And I'm not sure what other people are about to say, but yes, I agree. That was kind of almost a rhetorical question. Of course, more voices are important. But speaking about motivation, one of the things in my notes that I didn't get to was that with so many other people already out there and established, any new content creator that comes along is going to have a harder time having them rise to the top of the cream of the crop. I think I've mentioned before, to have the best odds for success in any creative endeavor, you got to be first, you got to be the best, or you got to be different. And you're never going to be the first because there's 438 people in line ahead of you. You're never going to be I personally think you're never going to be the best. It's incredibly difficult to be the best because everybody is so subjective in what they consider the best. So the thing that's left that is the easiest to accomplish, I think, is to be different, which is where I think really thinking about what you have to say before you ever get started will actually help propel you and keep you motivated by figuring that out beforehand. So first, best, different. And finally, Kabuki Kid wraps up with love of the work should also keep content creators going during plateaus or dips in viewership or subscribers. If people are simply doing it for the fame, they may be sadly disappointed. There's one common theme that I've seen in YouTubers, board game YouTubers, who have come on the scene and then fizzled out. And the common theme in those fizzlers have been what motivates them. If you're doing this to get free content, free games and stuff from publishers, and it's not because of the passion, because you want to entertain or you want to talk about a topic, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. I've heard other people say this, and I am in the same camp. If you are doing board game media content for the purpose of obtaining free games, it is so totally not worth your time. If you, for example, for me personally, if I was to calculate my hourly rate that it takes for me to put together a board game review video, that board game, if I was to take that money for what I would have charged for my own hourly rate for video production or web programming or whatever professionally, my own professional rate, the amount of time it takes me to put together a board game video, that board game probably costs me upwards of at least $300 to $400. So the amount of time and energy it takes to invest in putting together these things is not worth the few games that you receive. It would be worth more to just take the money, not do the review, and just spend the money and buy the game yourself. You'd come out ahead. So if you're doing this to receive product, it's not going to work, and you're going to fizzle out, because with 438 people in line ahead of you too, publishers have their pick of who to send games to. And again, becoming one of those people that's on their lists and on their radar is going to become more and more difficult. So don't take that approach. Do it because you have something to say and you have content you want to create. Insect Hunter. I could have used you when I was cleaning earwigs out of off my porch yesterday. Insect Hunter mentions, I run my own YouTube channel, and sometimes I just don't get time to develop content because I have to make money and provide for a family, so it becomes a lower priority. Have you ever felt this? Every minute of every day, Insect Hunter. Yep. That's one of the things I was going to mention, is that Tom Vassell, the originator of the Dice Tower, he started his channel. He baffles me because the Dice Tower is kind of well known for creating a lot of content, and Tom has 6 to 8 children at this point, and so he has a full family. And when he started, he was a full-time teacher, and he would still create all of this content. And again, I don't know what his priorities are when it turns, and that's not my place to speculate. But I know that he seems to keep things prioritized, keep things in perspective, what's important in life. But to be able to have a full-time job and a full family like that and still be producing the amount of content, that's one of those instances that sets the bar. And I'm not saying that the content is more important than family and work life, and just the opposite. It's not. Until you can make a living doing this full time, it's not. That's why I sneak these little metagame things in during my lunch break and other breaks during work, is because I've fitted it into my schedule. But Insect Hunter, you're not alone. I think every content creator finds that, and you have to find the ways to meet that equilibrium for yourself. And hopefully the stuff that I mentioned, since you posted that, has helped to give some ideas on how that can be done. All right. Someone's mouth. We're up to when I mentioned the tick, because someone mentioned spoon. Oh, here we go. Here's a cluster of questions. Robert mentions, do you ever review prior content and consider reshooting it? Yes. I think like many creative people, even when you create something that you're proud of, you set it aside, you come back a couple weeks later, and you're not so proud of it anymore. And I think that's a common thing. There's some things I've considered reshooting. There's also been a few videos that have died on the cutting room. I had a review of several dice games, a review of some board games, and a couple other things that I just wasn't satisfied with, to the point where they were abandoned. And so I think there's always that struggle. Now, what's important is to not get bogged down in that as a content creator. Keep going. Sometimes you just got to cut things and keep moving forward and learn from it. So don't get bogged down, and don't keep going back and get stuck in a quagmire of your old content. Move on. Nyrus mentions again, quote, why am I doing this, unquote, is probably the best question you can ask yourself. It will motivate you through the hard times and let you know why you are getting up every day. Totally agree. And like I said, that's, in case you missed it before, Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. It's one of the things mentioned in this book, and one of the reasons why I recommend any creative person with a creative endeavor should read Understanding Comics. Kabuki Kid mentions, the love of audience adulation is the root of all poorly motivated content creation. It can be a piece of the puzzle, but surely shouldn't be the core. This brings me to another little point I had that I didn't mention. I was going to talk about, you're right. And growing up, some of the individuals I grew up around taught me a very valuable skill. That when someone is giving you either positive or negative feedback, whatever, one thing I've learned is train your brain to be like a colander, like what you rinse out macaroni in. What you got to do is take in all of the feedback that you will receive throughout your day and throughout your life and sift it through that colander. Let all of the unimportant stuff go through the holes of the colander. But learn to capture and find what's important. Learn to find what's important and capture it. Oh, that's important. And this goes not only obviously for negative feedback, because if you post on the internet, you're going to get a lot of negative feedback and constructive criticism stuff. You got to learn to filter out and keep what's important and let the rest wash away through the holes of the calendar. But even possibly more importantly is to do the same with the positive feedback that you receive. Like Kabuki Kid mentions, the love of audience adulation, alliteration there, I like it. The love of audience adulation, if that's the root of your motivation, is bad. You got to let the positive stuff filter through the colander as well and pick out what's truly important in the positive. Otherwise, you'll start this positive feedback loop that will just do nothing but build a house of your own ego on sand. So that's pretty deep, I know. I'm pretty impressed that I came up with that. But I'm going to filter that through the colander, realize it's nonsense, and continue on the way to the next chat comment too. 20-sided turtle. That's a lot of sides for a turtle, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. 20-sided turtle mentions, yes, I used McCloud's book in an upper level literature course on comics that he taught. Yep, I believe that Scott's book is quality material enough to be educational material like that. So excellent. I'm glad to see it getting respect in those types of circles. Someone mentions when I was talking about, oh, the Dice Tower is in the chat. Well, that's never nerve-wracking to have the boss watching your live stream. So excellent. Hi, Dice Tower. Let's move on. Someone mentions in response to Tom is smart to have strict time limits, but he's also a bit too hardcore about it as well. He thinks everyone has the attention of a goldfish, but sadly, he might be right most of the time. I don't know. I don't know if it's too hardcore. If you can and you want to be a content creator, I recommend checking out something that's across the country called Toastmasters. Toastmasters is an organization that is designed to improve people's ability to do public speaking. And you'll learn really good stuff at Toastmasters. And I've done it off and on a couple of times, and I always learn stuff about it. And at Toastmasters, they have very specific things that they do. And one of them is learning how to keep people's attention and how to edit yourself to do a 2 to 3 minute speech. I mean, 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute, etc. And so I always wonder if Tom has any experience with Toastmasters, because like the 2 minute time limits and stuff, it takes me back to the Toastmasters days and trying to put together a speech, a very focused speech. And so I think for what Board Game Breakfast is trying to accomplish, I actually think the strict 2 minute time limit, especially for newbies, I think that makes sense. And the strictness of it, if it was lax, then it wouldn't be enforced and people would flounder. But with it being strict and putting that fear into people, oh, I'm going to be cut off, it definitely helps keep you focused. So anyway, so there's some other side of the coin there, other perspective on that one. All right. Okay. Nyrus comes back and says, if you can find a way to help or serve others with your content you create. It provides you an opportunity to look outside of yourself and keeps you out of your own head during the hard times. Yes, I don't know how successful I am at doing it, but even when I'm doing silly video stuff, whatever, I have a rule that I always try to have at least one nugget, one piece of meat in the content. Even when it's more of a production video that's a jokey type of video, I always try to have some central idea or bit of information in it. And having some piece of information that you're trying to communicate every single time will help keep you out of your own head, because it keeps you focused on, I'm trying to communicate this idea, and it gives you an objective to complete when you're doing your videos. So yes, definitely. 20-Sided Turtle comes back and spends one of their sides to say that this is a great topic. Schedule is so important for creating anything, also for finishing it. That's a good point. Finishing a thing before you start another thing. That is true. Finishing. It's easy to get started on things, but yeah, I think that's a whole other area that that doesn't get enough focus, is learning how to finish something. Roman mentions that it's always difficult to weigh the importance of work versus fun, and punctuates the point with a frowny face emoticon. And that is true. And that's one thing I wanted to really get across. I think it is important for a content creator that wants to be successful at any varying level of success to learn how to weigh the importance of work versus fun. But I don't want to say that the work is more important than fun. I wanted to make it clear that every single time work versus fun comes up, it's a choice that has to be made. And work is not always the correct choice. Ryan mentions, look at the distraction, look at the work, blue pill versus red pill. Chaz is Morpheus. Well, actually, in this, I believe Dave Sim, the creator of Cerebus, I believe he's Morpheus in this case, because they look at the distraction, look at the work, make a choice. That was from one of his editorials. So I'm not Morpheus. I am just plagiarizing Morpheus. So see, it makes your content so much easier when you can just pull it from other people, doesn't it? Let's see here. Robert Sell. Oh, okay. Go veering into a different distraction topic. Speaking of distractions real quick. Robert Sell mentions the best smelling game I've ever opened. Real quick, we'll let you know that any game in which the cards are produced at the factory or the same method that Magic cards are produced. Magic cards and things that share that same smell are the best smelling board games and card games that I will ever open. Oh, something about it. Okay. I'm going to have to reset the search here, do re-highlight stuff. All right, we jumped a little bit. So let me get back to where we were. Got to find Morpheus. Return to the theater of the real here. Why am I doing this? Getting up every day, goldfish, finishing. Oh, we're getting close. Best spelling game. All right. I skipped a bunch because they didn't have the hashtag in there, and I want to continue on the hashtag with the time we have left. We have about 10 minutes left. Another comment here to also find someone who will point out things you do when you speak that you don't realize, like saying like crazy, or like, over and over again. Point out things like this. Yeah, I did a video with my daughter, and I realized after I was editing it, I said the word awesome about 470 times in this stupid video. So I have purposefully made a new rule since then that the word awesome, I can use it once a day. And I've learned like fantastic, stupendous, other things have come into my vocabulary, but I've weaned myself off of awesome. And another thing, speaking of ums, one thing that Toastmasters did, since we've mentioned Toastmasters, is when people were giving speeches, they had a bell, one of those little, ding, ding bells at a help desk or something at a store. And if someone would say, they had someone on bell duty, and ding, that bell would be dinged anytime someone said, And at first it was super, super distracting, but it did two things. It taught you how to give a speech and deal with distractions that are going to come up as you're trying to give a speech. But it also made you cognizant of how often you were saying and stuff. And after a while, you gave more speeches, you started to hear that bell ding less and less because you weaned yourself off of saying So exercises like that could be really helpful. All right. Oh, no, the comments jumped. Oh, just when I was... My apologies, fellow viewers. I need to research my comments here due to jumping. Oh, that wasn't that hard to find where we were. Excellent. Here we go. The Family Showdown. Hello, nice to meet you. I don't think I've seen you in the chat before, so it's nice to meet you. Family Showdown lays down the gauntlet with individuals in the gaming industry are very welcoming. Designers and media and publishers. So don't be intimidated to speak with them. It really is one big community. And it's nice to... I hear that from you and from over and over and over again. It's fantastic. And there are times when work has to be done, but there are other times when these people have opportunities to talk to people. It seems to me they're always willing to do it when they have the time. Fun tip. I thought that BGG Con, Board Game Geek Con in November, was such a laid-back, relaxed environment. It seemed that was a great environment to just sit down with your favorite publisher, designer, content creator, anyone in the industry, and just play a game and talk or whatever. It seemed to be very conducive to not necessarily networking, but just that kind of, hey, how you doing type of conversations. So finding the right place for that too can be helpful. Okay, print and playthroughs, hello, mentions, I was wondering, since I was going to make a channel on board game humor, that how do you draw the line between serious stuff and humor? That's a very interesting question. I think it boils down to knowing your own voice. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule to it. I think it's going to sound stupid, but if you watch people like Jon Stewart, John Oliver, Stephen Colbert, these really great comedians who are also always trying to communicate an idea in their presentation. They're not just doing stand-up comedy, but they always have something they're trying to communicate and say and educate. They do a really good job of switching between the humor and the serious. That's one thing I actually really appreciate about them, is that there will be times when they turn off the humor and they come off and they know how and when to say, look, I want to talk about something seriously for a moment. So it's something that I think you just have to learn to listen to yourself and listen to your audience. And it's one of the things I think with enough time and talent and testing, you'll kind of the flow, you'll figure out the flow and it'll start to come more naturally as time goes by. Jerome joins us to say, isn't this, quote, talking about gaming a bit too meta? Well, I think that anyone who knows me knows that my personal opinion is you can never get too meta. If I was to find a way to do an episode talking about this episode where I was talking about board games, I would do that in a heartbeat. So, no, you can't. My opinion, you can't be too meta. But I appreciate the opinions of others, especially when that opinion matches my own. Okay, let's go. Ed comments, momentum is never really an issue, but getting the courage to start is my issue. How do I start? I think I've mentioned this. There was another episode of the Metagame, one of the first ones was talking about origins of a content creator or something, where I talked about getting started. But in a nutshell, and I hope this doesn't sound ridiculous, but it's true. The best way to start is simply to start. I went down to Best Buy, I bought the cheapest video camera that I could find, and it wasn't until later that I realized that it didn't have manual zoom. It only has automatic zoom, because when you buy a cheap camera, that some of the, I guess, manual zoom or some of the features that you give up, but which leads to some of the blurriness in some of my videos that I can't control. But it doesn't matter, because I grabbed a camera. I got a camera that is functional. I've got a space to record in and made it my own, figured out a schedule, and just started. And just a reminder, the very first video I did was like 5 minutes long. It was a review of Dinosaur Bingo. You're welcome not to go find that and watch it. because it's, wow. But anyway, that first video, 5-minute video, took at least 2.5 hours to record because I didn't know what I was doing at all yet. And it took nearly as long to do the editing on it. So, but the point is that it got done. And the next video didn't take quite as long. And the next one didn't take quite as long. And the next one didn't take quite as long. And so starting and doing it and finishing and going, wow, that sucked. Putting it out there, putting it aside, well, either throwing it away or publishing it, whatever you want. But putting it away and moving on and doing the next one and continuing to start, that's what's important. So how do you start? My advice, just start starting. And there you go. Oh, Nyrus Interactive is Discount Will Wheaton. Oh, okay, that puts it together. Yeah, it was awesome hanging out with you at Origins, Nyrus Interactive. I hope to see you at Gen Con or anything else that you're at, because that was a lot of fun. All right, we got like time for 3 little quick questions left. 20-Sided Turtle asks, off topic, Chaz, why no Board Game Blender or TPL segments from you? And to be honest, 2 reasons. One is just the amount of time. Again, I think I mentioned look at the work, look at the distractions and choose. And I've had to choose to produce the amount of content I want to produce. Means having to go without doing stuff for Throat Punch Lunch and Board Game Blender and stuff, just because the amount of time, tapped out amount of time. And the other thing, to be honest, this is the Dice Tower and not the Chaz channel. So I didn't want to be that guy that feels that he has to make an appearance in everything. I've been asked to, and I did a couple of things for Blender, but it's one of those things where I didn't feel that Chaz has to have a presence in everything, if that makes any sense. So those are the 2 reasons. All right. Print Playthrough mentions, you should make a mini-series. This was really inspiring. Well, thank you. This type of stuff, I'm always worried that it's going to come across as just too self-serving and ridiculous. So I hope that it's helpful. Adam mentions, Chaz, which Dice Tower member is the arm wrestling champion of the bunch? Well, to answer that question, I'm going to end here with this one. To answer that question, I'm going to have to go to the Dice Towers Extended Network because it's got to be Jared Hunnefeld from Flip the Table. He's not only a pro wrestling champion, but so by extension, I would assume he's an expert in all types of wrestling. Therefore, he would be the arm wrestling champion of the Extended Dice Tower Network. Speaking of which, the reason I'm going to end there is I'm also going to mention that July 6th through 10th or somewhere around there, that second week of July is Dice Tower Con. And I am fortunate enough, my wife surprised me with a gift of a trip to Dice Tower Con. So just in a couple of weeks, I will be at Dice Tower Con. And again, we've talked about the board game community is so welcome and opening. Put me to the test. And if you see me there, come by and say hi. And I'm hoping to be able to get in a lot of games. And the reason I mentioned Jared Hunnefeld also is because Flip the Table is also going to be at Dice Tower Con. And hopefully we will be able to get into some shenanigans together and produce some content about that. So thank you everyone for watching. I hope to see some of you at Dice Tower Con. And until then, I just wanted to mention that I'm thankful to and appreciate everyone who showed up in the live chat and played this episode of the Metagame with me. In the meantime, until our next time that we meet, for more board game news and reviews and commentary such as this, be sure to check out and subscribe both the Dice Tower and the Pair of Dice Paradise YouTube channels. And until next time, I've been Chaz Marler, and I totally blew my outro. I did it in the backwards order. So pretend, when you think back on this outro, and I know you will, just pretend it was super smooth and the best outro that you've ever seen. Thanks. Have a good day.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.